I decided to do the Super Half series of half marathon races because they were in European cities that I'd never been to, so it gave me an excuse to go. And I like the challenge. Um, when I signed up, there were just 5 races, and you had 36 months to complete them. Last year, Berlin was added, and the time period that you had to complete them all was increased to 60 months. As of this year, that overall time limit has been removed. So now you get as long as you need to complete all 6 races. I think this has been done because I think some people have been finding it difficult to get in some of the races. The first of the races that I did was the Cardiff Half Marathon. I have to admit I really enjoyed this race. Like many of the other cities, the race itself is on quite a flat course, so it's quite good for getting a good time. And I also like the race because it took you past many of the sites of the city. So I think the course itself made good use of Cardiff. It was well organised. It was clear how to get to where you needed to start the race from. And afterwards, as we will see, there was plenty of facilities for runners to get something to eat. There was a changing area, which you often don't get at half marathon races, although, as I remember, it was pretty small. But yeah, on the whole, I really enjoyed this race. If you get an opportunity to stay in Cardiff a bit longer, I would recommend a visit to Cardiff Castle. You can do a tour inside, which is a really good idea, but probably not the day before the half marathon as I did. The city itself is definitely worth a look around. It's quite attractive, lots to see. And you can also visit some of the places you run past on the half marathon, like the Millennium Centre and like Cardiff Bay. The second race that I did in the Superhalfs series was the Lisbon Half Marathon. The expo was fairly small, but apart from collecting your race number, the other thing that it was really useful for was advice about the transport arrangements for the day of the race. The reason this is important is because if, like me, you stay on the side of the river where a lot of the tourist sites are, you actually have to get a train service across the river to get to the other side in order to start the race. The race started on the 25 de Abril Bridge, which I have to admit was a pretty spectacular beginning. It was a pretty warm day to race, even though it was in March, and they actually gave out ice lollies at the end, which is the first time I can remember getting that in a race. In terms of the course itself, I have to admit I found it a bit disappointing. It had a very memorable start on the bridge, and as you can see here, it finished in quite a historic part of the city. But Lisbon being such a beautiful city, you didn't actually see that much of it as you went round the half marathon. If you do get an opportunity though, I would recommend spending some time in Lisbon before or after the race. Some of the places that I visited were the Tower of Bayam. I'm sorry if I've said that wrong, which is a 16th century fortification, and it was the point of disembarkation for Portuguese explorers, and it was the ceremonial gateway to Lisbon. I also visited the National Tile Museum. This is set in a former convent, which was founded in 1509, and it gives the history of tile from the 15th century to the present day. It is quite an impressive building, and the tiles it shows are an important part of Portuguese culture. I also had some pastel de nata, a Portuguese egg custard tart pastry, in the interest of research, of course. Another thing that I did in Lisbon is take one of these trams and go for a journey on one. And I think it's quite a nice thing to do, to see the city in a different way. I took it up to see Castel Saint-Georges. This has great views over the city, and it was, since the 12th century, it has been a royal palace, a military barracks, and now it's a national monument and museum. The next half marathon that I did in the series was in Copenhagen. The expo was quite small, like Lisbon. It'll be interesting to see as it gets a more popular race, perhaps over the next few years, whether that will change. On the day itself, it was very easy to get to the start and well organised. The only thing in the year that I did it is it did start quite late. I think it was 11 or half 11, and I think now it does make use of an earlier start, which is better. But the race itself was really good. It made good use of the city. You did run around many of the things to see. So I liked it, and it was flat and a reasonably fast course. In terms of the city itself, one of the places we visited was here, the Glyptothek, which had a beautiful garden in the middle of the gallery, as you can see here, and it also had art and antiquities to see. And Copenhagen is really just a lovely city to stroll around with the canals. I make very good photos and a good place to spend some time. We also visited the Tivoli Gardens, and I was really surprised to see actually how large they were. And I had to visit the Little Mermaid statue before heading home. The next half marathon I did was the Valencia half marathon. Valencia is seen as a running city with the marathon that it holds in about December each year. The expo was very big. I think it was probably the biggest expo that I'd been to for a half marathon up until this point. On the day of the race, it was pretty easy to get to the start. In terms of the race itself, I think it deserved the reputation that Valencia has as being a fast course, because it did seem like it was pretty flat to me, and it's quite an attractive course to run round. Very well organised. I think Valencia had the best, most efficient medal engraving service that I've come across. So I'd say it's an event that's very well set up for the number of people who run it. If you do get the chance, I would recommend spending some time in Valencia before or after the race, as it is an attractive city to walk around and there is a lot to see. One of the places that I visited was Valencia Cathedral, which is worth visiting because of the building, which started from the 13th century, but also because it's known for being the place where, by tradition, the holy chalice that was used by Jesus in the Last Supper is housed. This is kept in a chapel within the cathedral. Another thing you can do in the cathedral is to go up the 207 steps of the bell tower for good views over Valencia. You may not want to do that the day before a half marathon, as I did. You may also want to visit the City of Arts and Sciences, which has Europe's largest aquarium, a 3D cinema, and a science museum. I would definitely recommend spending some time in Valencia. I thought there was a lot to do, and a really nice city to walk around and spend some time in. Went to do the Prague Half Marathon. In terms of expo, I would say in size, it was somewhere between the smaller expos of Copenhagen and Lisbon and the larger one of Valencia. Like most of the other races, I would say easy to get to the start and very well organised. As you can see, the race was back in the time when I wasn't really filming myself running. But I would say it's a really good race in terms of seeing the city and getting a route that takes you around it. In terms of spending time in Prague, we went to the National Museum, which is shown here, which is quite a good place to go to find out more about Czech history. We visited the old town square. We went to the Charles Bridge. You don't run over this as part of the half marathon, but you do run past it with it on your right. It's also worth going to see the astronomical clock, although this can get very busy. And also going around Prague Castle. You can go around here without actually buying a ticket, but I would recommend, if you can, going in and seeing at least some of the sites. One of the things that you would pay to see is St. Vitus Cathedral. And I have to admit, if you get to see it on a day like we did here, with the light coming in through the windows, it is quite something. But yeah, it's other things to see. St. George's Basilica is one of the oldest preserved parts of Prague Castle. I have to admit, Prague was a place I wanted to visit for a while, and I wasn't disappointed. The last half marathon I had to do to complete the Superhalfs series was the Berlin half marathon. To go to the expo before the race to pick up your race number, but also a wristband that you had to wear until the race itself, because that was how you got into the runners area on the day. The expo was one of the largest I think I've ever been to for a half marathon, probably similar to Valencia. On the day itself, the runners area was just by the Reichstag and very well organised despite the large number of people who were actually doing the race. Finding your right start area was really quite straightforward, and there was a nice atmosphere at the start while we were waiting to begin. I think Berlin is a really good half marathon race. It has a very good atmosphere. Crowds really turn out for quite a lot of the route and really do encourage the runners around. You also run past many of the sights of the city as well, which adds interest to the race. And I like the fact that the course is quite flat, so it's a good place to go to if you want to do a good time. It's a very memorable finish to the race, with crowds on both sides to cheer you on. And you run through the Brandenburg Gate, with the finish line just on the other side. I really enjoyed the Berlin Half Marathon because I think it was a course that's really good to do a fast time, and one where it does take you around the sights of the city. In terms of sights to see in Berlin, I would recommend the Spy Museum as being interactive and fun. The DDR Museum was also interesting as it gave you an insight into what life was like in East Germany. Museum Island is also worth visiting. It has many different museums, including ones devoted to antiquities, but also an art gallery as well. An alternative place to see art is the East Side Gallery, which shows art on the former piece of the Berlin Wall. Another art gallery I would recommend is the Gemälde Gallery, which I have to admit I really enjoyed. Would I recommend doing the Superhalfs series of half marathon races? Well, it encouraged me to visit 6 European cities that I hadn't visited at a time that I signed up for the race series. And I really enjoyed visiting them. And the races themselves, I think, were quite well chosen in terms of they were mostly flat and reasonably fast courses. And I do think a lot of them made very good use of the city by the route that the races chose. And it is good to have the challenge of not just doing 6 races, but getting the medal at the end for completing the series. The main problem doing the Superhalf series of races now is it is so popular. Most races have a ballot or are likely to have one, apart from Prague, which at the moment is first come, first served. But there is now no time limit for completing it. So I think it is worth doing the series of races, as long as you accept that it may take you some time to complete them all.